This is the far north. It's midwinter and it's dawn at 11 o'clock in the morning. The sun will stay right there on the horizon for 2 hours. Then it'll go down, just like the temperature, which ranges from 20 to 65 degrees below. But no matter how cold it is, men live and work outside, comfortably, safely, if they act sensibly. They get around like this. Or this. And especially when there's a war like this. This is the Air Force's way of getting around. Of getting the most, the quickest, to the right place at the right time. Get up nice, don't they? You may think, why shouldn't they get up? Airplanes are supposed to fly. Well, don't forget, it's from 20 below to 65 below. You know what happens when it's that cold? Oil flows like glue. Gasoline won't vaporize. Spark plugs won't spark. Batteries won't bat. Magnetos get punch drunk. Carburetors turn out ice cubes. Rubber and plastics crack like twigs. Props stop pitching. Metals lock tighter than an old maid's hope chest. And that isn't all, not nearly all. The cold hits everything. Even our cameras acted up. See that jiggle? Cold froze the film gate. See that jerk? Cold made the camera head so stiff it couldn't turn smoothly. But that's beside the point. You don't fly a camera. Your life doesn't depend on a camera. The point is, it takes a hell of a lot of nursing to get all kinds of equipment to operate in sub-zero weather. Here at Ladd Field, the Air Corps' main cold weather experimental station in Alaska, they figure out how to nurse them. One of the first things they found out was that while in Arizona, say, it takes 6 mechanic hours or less to fly an airplane 1 hour, in the Arctic, it takes 29 mechanic hours. Yes, sir, that cold slows you down. It's apt to cause men to maintain equipment poorly or carelessly. Besides what it does to the equipment itself. And there's only one way to overcome all troubles, with heat. Heat in one form or another. Heat is the only thing that keeps these babies warm enough to fly. And like any baby, the first thing you gotta do is cover them up. Covers for engines, wings, sometimes for fuselage and windshields. And wheel covers to protect tires like this. And from harmful freezing of snow and ice. Wing covers must fit perfectly or they're of little use. They need to be put on carefully and correctly or this happens. Or this. You wouldn't leave the sails on a catboat this way, would you? Might as well not cover the wings at all, except that if you don't, frost forms on the wing and changes its lifting characteristics. In fact, it takes the lift right out, as it did here. That's the only lift this ship got, and that kind of lift won't carry bombs to Tokyo. Slight things, wing covers, but they guard lifting power that would have made this sort of lifting power unnecessary. Many a perfect flying record has been spoiled because they weren't used. Apply them properly so that this equipment can be used to better purpose. And incidentally, cranes and all ground equipment must be winterized and maintained as carefully as aircraft. Bearings, parts, all circulatory systems must be serviced with proper winter lubrication. Motors must be heated for starting, the same as airplane engines. Well, you see, we're back to heat again. That old black magic that keeps them flying in the north. Field shelters are the GI igloos that conserve heat best. But sometimes they're not always handy or available. That's not stopping these boys, though. Cold? 25 below. But there's an oil cooler to change, and so even a makeshift windbreak helps to keep that wind from biting your nose off. Hold on, emergency landing. Reason? Because. This pilot couldn't get his gear down because the hydraulic system failed, because the crew chief muffed thorough inspection, because he didn't have a warm enough field shelter to work in. Here's one of the busiest boys in the north. Luckily, the pilot walked away from that crash landing, so back goes the crash truck to stay inside with the ambulance so that both can be instantly ready for the next guy who catches cold. Meanwhile, one fighter airplane is laid up for 4 months. And so we come to towing. In case of a crack-up, towing is done under the direction of the local engineering officer. Tow at slow speeds, never faster than a man can walk. Use a towing triangle whenever possible. Otherwise, a rope. Never steel cable, which has no give and will break metal parts made brittle by the cold. Don't tow with a nose wheel. You're liable to break it or to distort the hydraulic packing in the nose strut and cause excessive strut leakage. From the front, tow only by the main landing gear. The tail wheel should be unlocked whenever towing. And when towing by the tail wheel, always lift the elevators. Don't use wheel tractors for towing. They haven't enough traction in snow and ice-covered surfaces. Track-laying tractors, nicknamed cats, are used for towing. A man should always be on each wingtip and on the tail to prevent damage. And have a man in the cockpit at all times with the hydraulic pressure up so that the brakes can operate. Parkers limit vision, so care must be taken by the men to look on all sides. There goes Flaming Mamie, in for the night. The boys are going to give her a little beauty treatment. To overcome the rough treatment, Old Man Winter gave some of her parts today. That's the only reason airplanes ever go into the hangar in cold weather, for repair. They're better off outside because sudden temperature changes cause condensation and subsequent freezing and present problems of expansion and contraction in metals and materials. Mamie's sister ships will be tied down, covered up, blocks put under wheels, and all controls locked for the night. That ain't haze, it's ice fog. Pretty, huh? But only from where you're sitting. Wait till you're out in it, soldier. You know what they're doing? They're getting auxiliary equipment ready for morning start. Charging battery carts, working on heaters, servicing extinguishers, stuff like that. No, you can't see it because we ain't got no pictures of it. Coal made the film so brittle that it cracked and ripped running through the camera. We just have to take our word for what they're doing, not only to ground equipment, but for the airplanes, too. Up here, pre-flight starts as soon as the plane lands. They drain fuel sumps to prevent condensate freezing. Dilute oil, clean struts, checking their fluid levels, and inflating them properly. And to hell with it. If we don't get some light on the screen, you go to sleep. Besides, you'd never remember it all now anyway. Next morning, more pre-flight. At 40 below, pre-flight is a project. Engines have to be heated 3 hours or more before run-up. Prolonged use of oil immersion heaters is necessary. Cleatrax with compressor and booster will stand by to pump up struts that go flat. All this isn't even the half of it, but it gives you a rough idea, which is all this picture's for. And even after engines are started, pre-flight isn't over. A lot of troubles can develop. An oil line might blow out of the hose coupling, or the oil in the line to props might congeal so the props won't change pitch. Hydraulic flaps won't work if moisture is frozen on packings and pistons. Ailerons, elevators, rudders won't work if grease in the bearings is congealed, or if water or oil is frozen on the control leads or exposed parts. I could go on with this fascinating information, but we're running out of scenes like these, so I'll have to save the rest of the data for some other time. Well, looks like we're ready to take off now. Oh, no, we're not. Flight's canceled this morning. Yes, sir, that's a good old Arctic blizzard. Even polar bears stay home in this stuff. As March of Time might say, when the icy blast of winter strikes, the battle is against a foe that cannot be stopped, cannot be overpowered. A foe that makes its own rules and must be fought on its own terms. Or, to boil it down, if you're caught up in this chop suey, you pray the ground crew did its job so well that you and the airplane have a chance to do yours. Uh-oh, there's the old faithful L-1 rescue ship. Somebody must be down. Let's go along. Rescue ships, by the way, are absolutely necessary at every station and must be ready to fly in any temperature or weather, because when accidents happen, quick rescue is imperative. There's the L-1, parked near the B-24 down there. That Liberator's flat in a pancake on its belly. Final count, 2 dead, 4 crippled. It could have flown out the blizzard, but it lost 2 motors, because both the ground and flight crews were negligent and didn't learn their jobs fully. The pilot, sure of his position, started out on foot for help. It was 45 below. 24 hours and 25 miles later, he had unknowingly circled back to within 5 miles of the airplane. He had more luck than brains. If forced down, stay put. That's the first law of the Arctic. Violate it, and the fine is your life. Well, it looks as if the blizzard's over. Let's see what's going on around here. Not so fast, C-47. Before you can take off, there are a few chores to be done in field maintenance. Runways must be cleaned with snow-goes, scrapers, and D8 tractors. That's a snow-go, and it does the bulk of the work. Arctic operations require 2 types of runway, ski and wheel. For ski planes, the runway is never scraped clean. 2 inches of snow are left to give the airplane better traction and prevent slippage due to ice. Care must be taken not to leave ridges of snow, which make landings very hazardous. For successful landings, the runways are marked with spruce boughs 2 to 3 feet high, or any natural markings that will give the pilot necessary depth of perception. Parking areas can be rolled, but it is better to keep them entirely clean of snow. Hey, what's going on? The other guy just took it from there. Now this snowman's trying to put it back. Come on, Jokester, pick it up and put it where you found it. That's better. Now get out of here. Well, you don't have to back up all day. Oh, I see. You're getting into position to follow up that scraper. The grader or scraper makes windrows of snow, and the snow go runs down the windrow and throws it off the runway. What am I saying? Double talk? Hey, I said throw it off the runway, not on the airplanes. Well, that's a good example of what not to do with a snow go. If that snowman stays loose, they'll never finish cleaning. He's leaving almost as many suds as the blizzard. Yes, sir, soldier, that runway is just a starter. All these surfaces have to be cleaned before the airplanes are ready to fly. Windshield covers or just a tarp thrown over would have saved all this work. Let's go on to the... Won't somebody stop that guy? Let's go on to the wing cleaning. This is darned important, for the weight of snow can make wings sag out of shape. So they must be cleaned whenever it snows, even though they're covered and whether or not the airplane is to fly. Now, these boys aren't trying to tie the airplane down. This is the old Arctic rope trick. You discover there's a way to do everything up north if you use your noggin for something besides a totem pole. This is a compact little D1 heater. There's an F1 twice as large that gives twice as much heat, but this one is more widely used. Get in there, Sonny. Get that ice out of those control hinges. Apply heat just to loosen it, not to melt it, or the water will freeze all over again deep inside those slots. And pilots find that very embarrassing. Well, that just about cleans up the cleaning. Let's pick up pre-flight again. Since the operation of all equipment depends upon heat, heaters are perhaps the most important single item of auxiliary equipment. And what makes the heater operate? Heat. There's a hand-cranked heater that heats the heater. And you might suppose a smaller heater that heats the hand-cranked heater that heats the heater that heats engines and things? No. The fact is, a blowtorch is used for that, unless the hand-cranked heater can be kept warm indoors. As a matter of fact, sometimes cold causes as much trouble with the heater engines as with airplane engines themselves. Oil freezes in the crankcase. Gas lines clog with ice. So the heater is best started if it, too, is left in a warm place and moved to the airplane only when it is operating properly. Don't overchoke the unit. When it's warm enough to start, about 3 pulls with the choke held down is sufficient. This type of heater has 3 ducts, one for the engine, one for the cockpit or battery, and one for the accessory compartment, containing starting generators, vacuum pumps, tachometer drives, hydraulic pumps, and so forth. Normally, on a 2-engine airplane, a heater should be used on each engine, with the 3rd duct from one heater going to the cockpit to heat instruments, and the 3rd duct from the 2nd heater going to the battery compartment. And you going crazy trying to figure out that, Rube Goldberg. But there it is, fellas, hooked up just like the man says. In extreme cold, engine exhaust gases don't dissipate quickly. So always make sure this poison exhaust blows downwind, lest it be sucked into the heater fan. This is especially dangerous when the heater ducts are directed into shelters or cockpits where personnel might be overcome by carbon monoxide, in which event you're in a permanent state of cold storage and the heat will do you absolutely no good. Don't let hot air from heaters blast against ignition harness, flexible hose, self-sealing tanks, or other rubberized or fabric materials unless you can hold your hand there comfortably for at least a minute. And if by this time you're so numb you can't feel whether it's warm air or cold, don't let it blast against your hand. Hold everything. Looks like we're finally going to get one going. Don't prime before you're actually ready to start. Then only lightly. And when the engine is being turned over, the primer should be operated with short, sharp strokes until regularity of firing results. If the engine doesn't start after a reasonable attempt, stop cranking. Up north, overload burns out a starter. Let it cool and investigate the trouble. And after the engine starts, if there's no oil pressure within 30 seconds, shut down and investigate. I guess I was ahead of myself. This baby's not ready to go yet. Probably needs more heat. Engines die because spark plugs foul, or because magneto points stick, or because... Well, while the boys figure out what the trouble is, let's visit Flaming Mamie. Last night's beauty treatment should have put her in shape to fly. Although in sub-zero weather, despite the most thorough preparation, troubles can develop even while taxiing for takeoff. Brakes may fail because leaky hydraulic fluid fouls them, or because the hydraulic system itself failed. Struts might go down, or... skip it. You'll learn these problems later. Right now, it looks as if Mamie's all ready to fly. Get hot, Mamie. Well, you've seen and heard just a few problems connected with Arctic operations. Properly worked out, they're not too tough. We've got the answers on how to keep equipment and men in good shape. And you'll learn them all. Just like the boys who primed Mamie and her fighting friends for this mission. You got to know a lot of things and do a lot of things to get them up in cold weather. And whether they get up and stay up is up to you. Then, in the coldest weather, Mamie can really flame. Heading for Japan. Hotter than hell.